All right, everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues, episode 148. Peter Shumlin being optioned to help with California's attempt at single payer. Like, Jerry Brown's been talking about it for a while, and the state of California is, really far left, so naturally single payer. It's like here, it's a popular idea. I'd say a large minority of the population probably solely wants it. It's the big issue for them. And there are plenty of other people who would at least tolerate that. It's got to have above 50% approval, the idea of having single payer. But you're probably not going to get it, and I'll tell you why. The state of Vermont being homogenized as far as, we don't have any big cities. There aren't any, there are some touristy enclaves in the state, but generally, most of Vermont is, lower and middle class. We're a working class state, fundamentally. We have we have tourist enclaves, and that's about it as far as wealth in the state of Vermont. And a few McMansions, but not very many. And second homers, but they're not Vermonters. They just come here to go skiing for the most part. The state of Vermont, as a small state, small geographically and in population, was the perfect place to adopt single payer. All they had to do was say, hey, we'll cut a bunch of other programs and spending to pay for it. Because Shumlin came out, he commissioned a study on the urging of the further left. He's a liberal, but I mean people who are to the left of Sanders. They demanded he commission a study. He commissions it. And he comes out when the studies conclude and says, well, there's no way we can pay for it. The problem is this. The problem was you could pay for it, but you'd have to cut so much other stuff that people would whine, or you'd have to raise taxes to such a degree that the state would be empty. There would be nobody left. Absolutely nobody would want to make their money and live in Vermont and be subject to the kind of in-state taxes that would be necessary to pay for single payer. It would become a state of people under 18 and people who have already retired and whose passive income is generally exempt from most forms of taxation. In other words, the very old and their grandkids and everyone else sort of lives in New Hampshire and maybe works still in Vermont, but there'd be no jobs to work at, so, basically Vermont would be screwed. You realize how many people would move out of the state? California, on the other hand, is demographically very diverse. That is, you have huge cities, and then you have basically hayseed and empty territory. So trying to balance it out so that nobody feels screwed in a situation where there's much more a difference between different populations in your state is much more difficult. Number two, California is even more addicted to socialized spending than Vermont is. What exactly are you planning to cut to pay for this? You're not going to be able to up taxes. You're already losing a lot of your entrepreneurial and sort of younger working class to Texas anyway. They've been moving in droves out of California now for several years because of your tax burden. If you raise it any higher, you're not going to have a whole lot left other than Silicon Valley. That's all you'd have left. Even that'll uproot itself. They'll be like, oh, the new Silicon Valley is going to be Austin. The new Silicon Valley is going to be the middle of nowhere in Maine. We're going to move into Stephen King's backyard. We're going to go to a low-tax state like Maryland at that point. It's going to be a clusterfuck for you. And keep this in mind as well. Before you want to get Shumlin involved or really go down the path of spending a bunch of money to commission a study that'll tell you exactly what it told us here, which is it's impracticable. Shumlin also thought it was a good idea to work with Jonathan Gruber. And that's a little problem, because I'm 99% sure Gruber had already been outed as, on that hot mic moment where it's like, oh yeah, we lied to people to get the ACA passed. Haha, those morons, they think it's healthcare, it's really just a tax. And the corporate, healthcare structure, the pharma companies and stuff, they're the ones that wrote it anyway. Like, ha ha ha, we made so much money. Jonathan Gruber, who oversees the shitty rollout on the national scale, openly admits that he lied to everybody, comes to the state of Vermont. Shumlin's beck and call to help, set things up and study this. And he embezzles from our state hundreds of thousands of dollars, gets sued by the Vermont Attorney General, and then settles out of court. He tried to defraud our state out of a six-figure total, and they had to settle the case. Is that really the sort of you trust Shumlin's judgment after hiring Gruber, thinking that was a good idea? I pity the fool. I don't think it's not a great idea to involve Shumlin in this. Look, there's a reason that he didn't bother to seek re-election. His approval bottomed out because he had alienated the far left by denying them single payer, by saying, look, we simply can't pay for it. He alienated everyone else by wasting a bunch of money on a study and by being a liberal. So that was his, a liberal Democrat that can't even survive in the state of Vermont and you want to import them to California. Great idea there. And I've said before, again, you can have single payer even nationally, but you've got to cut other things. The problem is in a state without a military budget to dip into, you're sort of screwed when you're trying to do that. What else are you going to cut? Oh, yeah, there goes the tax credit for poor families. Yeah, bye. There goes this subsidy for the working class to get a better, community college education. Bye. Oh, here goes some grants and shit for colleges. Yeah, we don't need them. There goes food, our state food stamps. Oh, we had to cut that, to pay for your health care. You're starving now, so you're going to make use of it a lot. They'll give you sugar cookies and orange juice when you collapse. You stupid, mind-numbed, overworked slave peasants. That's basically what these states want anyway. It doesn't really matter if it's a red or a blue state. But the state of California is already virtually non-competitive when it comes to supplying the kind of jobs that people really want to get into if they have, a halfway decent education. Vermont has the same problem already too, which is exactly why we didn't try single payer. It would have been so terrible for our state. We would have no jobs. We'd have no residents. Our state population would be zero. Vermont voted #1 in environmentally friendly for the 100th year running. Yeah, there's no pollution because there's no fucking people. That's basically that. We'd be #1 in that. It'd be a non-functioning state at that point. I would have left. Looking at the jacking up of the tax rate that they were talking about, even if they cut other programs, I would have left. I would have left the second that it was passed. You realize how much I'd be screwed? I wouldn't be able to make ends meet. I'm not paying the state 15% of my fucking income for the benefit of single payer that I'm not even going to use for the next 10, 20 years in all likelihood. I understand catastrophic injury and stuff like that can be a problem. Yeah, you're taking a gamble not having health insurance. At the same time, though, no state appears to have designed a working solution to this. Now, it shouldn't be that way. You could pay for it, but you gotta get rid of some of the other socialized crap. Streamline things, make it simpler. And stop doing the grant and subsidy bullshit too, because that's a terrible idea. That's what we need. Yeah, single payer would be fine, but get rid of any 10 other bureaus. Like you're gonna have to form a bureau to administer healthcare. It's gonna have to have its own bureau. Get rid of 10 others in its place. Unclog the government. It'll drain the swamp. Fire 500,000 government workers so we don't have to fucking pay for them anymore. Yeah, there's your single payer. They'll be they have to get subsidies because we'll be unemployed, but hopefully the private marketplace will begin to grow. Yeah, you'd have it would be a healthier workforce. It would be a healthier country, maybe. Although private health insurance, why should we even have the concept of insurance? Healthcare should be so affordable that we don't even need insurance. Oh, but then you'd put a million healthcare workers out of business. Yeah, well, that's a good thing. You wouldn't need them anymore. You wouldn't need the health insurance bullshitters. The very concept of insurance tends to be usury, so go ahead and import Shumlin's Gruber mentality to California. Fucking see what happens. That's about all. Peace out.